Ed Roth Taylor is the son of a powerful, noble family of Ruffia. He is feared for his bullying and bad behavior at the academy where he acts like king. One day, Ed receives a letter from his family. The letter says he is disowned and removed from the family register. He loses everything, his title, his wealth, and even kicked out of his dorm room. Students at the academy gossip about his downfall. They still avoid him because of his bad reputation, but many believe he deserves his fate for trying to cheat during the entrance exam. Ed feels that life is unfair. The people who judge him don't know the real him. He isn't the villain they think he is. The truth is strange. He has been transported into his favorite video game, The Failed Swordsman of Sylvania. In this game, he isn't a hero or a genius, but a minor villain who appears only at the start of the story. This character is weak, powerless, and destined to end up as a beggar in the game's ending. Ed checks his stats and feels hopeless. His stamina, strength, and magic are embarrassingly low. He is supposed to be a student of magic, but even a farmer NPC has better stats. He realizes this is why his character is so insignificant in the game, but Ed doesn't want the ending where he becomes a beggar. He decides he will change his fate no matter how hard it is. The academy is still his chance to build a new life. It is a top school, and anyone who graduates has a bright future. He knew Tuffet was extreme starting part of the scenario, but is also extremely important for him. Since his tuition for the first semester is already paid, Ed decides he will stay, work hard, and use his knowledge of the game to survive. His goal is to graduate and live a peaceful life. However, his low stats make him doubt if he can succeed. So he decides to focus on surviving the next 10 days until the semester starts. To avoid the students and their stares, Ed leaves the academy grounds and goes into the nearby forest. On the first day, he tries cutting logs and moving them with magic. His weak magic drains his energy quickly and he becomes hungry. Remembering a story from his grandfather, Ed tries to make stew from tree bark. It tastes awful and makes him feel sick. He realizes wood is better for building than for eating. Ed works hard to build a shelter. He cuts logs, makes a frame, and puts everything together. After hours of effort, his shelter is finally complete. His stats improve slightly and earns a small achievement. This gives him hope. Ed notices that not he is skilled with magic, but also good with his hands. Using his handy skills, he crafts a harpoon, which also unlocks an achievement. He uses the harpoon to catch fish, cooks them, and enjoys his first proper meal in 2 days. For the first time, he feels he can survive. While eating, Ed hears someone behind him. He turns and sees Princess Fenia. She is the third princess of the Cole Empire and the person who exposed his cheating during the entrance exam. Because of her, Ed lost everything. Now she looks angry to see him still at the academy. Fenia doesn't understand why Ed hasn't been expelled yet. She thinks he is shameless and warns him to leave the academy. Ed feels nervous because Fenia has a special power that lets her see through lies. If she reports him, he will be expelled and will be the end for him. As she scolds him, Ed sees his fish burning in the fire, adding to his frustration. Ed knows he needs to calm her down. He tries his best to divert her attention, then simply bends down and thanks her. Fenia looks surprised, detecting no lies from Ed. She knows Ed's family, the Roth Taylor, are infamous for their genocidal experiments on humans, and are considered a trash family that should be destroyed or executed. But for Ed, it's different. He is lucky because he has already been disowned by his family. This gives him an advantage in the academy, or else it would be end for him in the game. Ed begins to wonder why she is alone in the forest without any escort or uniform. He recalls that it's likely for the class placement test in video games timeline where students are supposed to find magical beads. Ed knows that Fenia wants to join Class A, the Academy's top class. He offers to help her, knowing she will struggle to pass the test without assistance. Fenia grows suspicious of his offer, thinking it might be a trick. Ed remains calm and insists he is being honest. He tells her that if he lies, she can have him expelled immediately. This is his last chance, and he knows he has to convince her to trust him. Ed helps Fenia by telling her the exact location of the magical bead hidden under Marilda's guardian tree in the middle of the island. Following his instructions, she heads there and finds the bead just as Ed had described. Fenia feels surprised and conflicted. The Ed she knew from 3 days ago was a cheater and a liar, but now she finds herself unable to understand this new version of him. The next day, the class placement tests come to an end, and the students gather to await their evaluations. Professor Glast arrives and asks everyone to present the beads they have collected. Some students come forward with different objects, like magical eggs, but they are placed in Class F for failing to meet the test's requirements. The professor explains that the beads needed for success lack magical power, which makes them harder to identify. 2 of these beads were found by the main protagonists, Jix and Lortel. Then, Professor Glast raises his hand and points to the final student who has retrieved the 3rd bead from the guardian tree. He declares the student to be at the top of the class, leaving everyone in awe. Sitting by the riverside, Ed makes a crude fishing rod, earning another achievement. He remembers from the game that Princess Finea developed sharp judgment skills because she grew up dealing with people who flattered her or lied to her. She became so good at spotting lies that no one could trick her, but this skill also made her life harder. In the game's original story, Fenia gets the title Princess of Love, not because of her beauty, but because of her hard work. She fails the class placement test and works hard to improve, eventually proving herself and earning respect. Ed knows that if he tells her where the magical bead is, he can avoid getting expelled, but it will ruin the original story. If the story changes too much, all the knowledge Ed has about the game will become useless, and he will lose his advantage. However, the information Ed gives Fenia about the bead, though seemingly a gift, is actually a cleverly laid trap. Fenia wants to keep her royal identity a secret because she feels embarrassed by the special treatment her status brings. She wants to prove herself without relying on her status. While the bead would guarantee her top results in the placement test, she cannot accept it because finding it without her own effort would compromise her values. Fenia is determined to walk the righteous path, which is how she earns the title Princess of Love in the original story. Since Ed can't lie to Fenia, he uses mind tricks to control the situation. As he predicts, Fenia refuses to take the bead, leaving her without the bead she needs to pass the test. Another student, Lucy, finds the bead instead. Fenia is angry and frustrated. She knows Ed told her the truth, so she can't punish him. But his actions ruined her chance to succeed on her own. Ed feels relieved and happy to have retained his spot in the academy and kept the story on track. He quickly heads back to the academy to attend the opening ceremony for the new semester. At the ceremony, Ed eats and enjoys the food, feeling more at ease than before. Many students notice the change in his behavior. The Ed they once knew as a bully and infamous troublemaker now seems like a completely different person. Ed's focus is now clear. His one and only goal is to graduate from the academy. Among the groups of students, there is one girl who can't help but notice Ed. She observes him closely, surprised by how much he seems to have changed, as if he's an entirely new person. On his first day back at the academy, the faculty praised everyone who is made to the academy into new, improved form. However, Ed is unexpectedly called to meet the principal. He fears the worst and thinks he might be expelled. However, to his surprise, the principal only smiles and speaks calmly. Ed suspects that the princess might have reported him, but feels relieved when he realizes the principal doesn't seem to know about his actions at all. This experience makes Ed more cautious. He resolves to stick closely to the original story and avoid straying from it. While living in the forest, Ed's survival skills improve significantly over time. He becomes skilled at crafting good quality arrows and begins thinking about how to enchant his arrows with magic spells. One evening, after hunting for food to prepare dinner, Ed heads back to his tent. On his way, he notices a girl sitting under the Marilda tree. It is the same girl who had noticed him during the opening ceremony, Janica Failover. Janica is the genius spirit sorcerer of the second year, same year in which Ed is. She sees Ed and excitedly approaches him. She enthusiastically introduces herself and tells him that the magical Marilda tree has shared stories about him with her. The tree has observed Ed in the forest but isn't bothered by his presence. This reassures Ed, giving him a sense of calm. He casually remarks that even a fierce wild wolf can have a tender heart. Janica seems surprised for a moment but then laughs at his words. She stretches out her hand and asks if he wants to touch the spirit, which she signed a contract with to be her friend. Ed, however, isn't interested in interacting with Janica further. He politely declines, saying he can't see the spirit in her hand, and excuses himself, claiming he only came to the area to gather food. With that, he walks away. The real reason Ed keeps his distance from Janica is her crucial role in the original story. He knows that Janica Failover is a key character, and building a connection with her might alter the storyline, costing him any formational advantage he has to navigate the game's events. As Ed walks away, Janica calls her spirit friend, a wild wolf, Milda, the guardian of the forest. She leans against Milda, feeling comfortable, and starts talking to it. She thinks about Ed and finds him fascinating, just as Marilda told her earlier. Even though she tries hard to be nice to him, Ed only gives short yes or no answers. Still, she believes this won't be the last time they meet. The next morning, Ed works hard to avoid being late for the academy. His shelter is far from the campus, so getting there is always a challenge. But his efforts pay off as his stats keep improving. Ed does everything himself. His chores, washing his clothes, and carefully managing his rations and supplies. He is determined to earn a scholarship. Janica can't help but watch him from a distance, curious about his routine. When Ed finally notices her, he yells and asks why she keeps following him. He demands to know if she even realizes who he is. Ed Roth Taylor, the most infamous and dangerous person at the academy. Ed tries to stay distant from Janica despite her polite and friendly nature. She tells him she doesn't judge him based on others' opinions because she doesn't truly know him. Ed, however, is cautious and wary. He knows Janica may seem naive and innocent, but she is the final boss of Act 1. Ed decides it's safer not to get too close or engage with her more than necessary. Feeling overwhelmed by his challenges and hardships, Ed takes a risk and asks Janica for a favor. She becomes excited, thinking it's something important. But when Ed asks for money, her